morning, everybody. Welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions, we've got guesses. I'm Nash, been doing Radio Dead Air for ages and ages, but in addition to that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, who also works in IT. If you have tech questions for us, please, by all means, send those along. You can send those to the email address. You can put those in the YouTube comments when this video goes up on YouTube. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, I had a week.
I imagine you did.
Well, okay, so before we get into the story about why I might have had a week, I didn't actually have a week because of that story. And the reason I didn't is because from about the day that the thing we're going to talk about was released to about the time when they released the fix, we had no network at work. So if it was applicable to us, we never got it because our network was down.
Okay, so what we're talking about is you probably have heard about this. Everybody heard about this out of nowhere.
I hope everybody heard about this.
Yeah, Crowdstrike is the word.
And
what
it is not the bird.
It is not the bird. What is Crowdstrike? Why did this happen? What is happening? Who is happening?
I keep in my head, it keeps getting translated as Cloudstrike, which sounds cooler. But what it is it's basically anti-DDoS, anti-malware support for a site or a computer. And the problem they had is they pushed out a bad update.
Oh, and that's putting it mildly.
Yes, a very bad update that apparently they did not either properly in-house test or alternately didn't test just at all. Just, oh no, this will work.
Crowdstrike, if you want to know what Crowdstrike is, it is a cloud-based network security firm. It was actually came into being around the time of the big Sony hack, which was a long while back. They offer services that are effectively, the idea of them is real time. Like they fast reaction to virus threats and other issues, that could affect you.
Malware attacks, DDoSs in theory, I think they do as well.
Yeah, the big ones, the
great and they've got a lot of corporate and government clients. Mm-hmm. As happens when you have something that works fairly well until it doesn't.
Yeah. It was because of the way they have it set up as a cloud setup, they can push out updates rapidly to
yes.
Everyone. The problem here is normally when you have that many clients on that critical system, you do not push out all the updates at once. You stagger them.
Yes.
And the reason you
do something like, okay, we've got this update, push it to these 1,000 people. It's not crashing them. Fantastic. Let's expand to 10,000. Fantastic. Oh, we got some bug reports. Sort that out. Not bad. Fantastic. Bigger set. Yeah. Bigger set, everyone.
It was staggeringly bad. I see that, Ishmael. The way this works is you by staggering it, if a big problem suddenly pops up, then everyone isn't taken down. A large section are, and you can focus on working on those people, but everyone doesn't go. In this case, they sent out a bad update that hit literally everyone. banks,
E-
airlines.
except Southwest Airlines.
Southwest, I cannot believe this. I'm still something I cannot believe the reason why Southwest Airlines wasn't affected. It doesn't compute. Literally,
Because they're still on Windows 3.1.
Having
flown Southwest, I can say I believe that.
There is no modern computer. In fact, I don't think there's been a computer since the turn of the decade that can natively run Windows 3.1 because it's a 16-bit operating system. And we've transitioned to we can barely do 32-bit anymore. I don't think there's anything you can boot UEFI won't allow it. I don't think you can boot DOS like that anymore.
I don't believe so. I mean, there might be a workaround, but I don't know of it. And certainly we don't use it at work.
I mean, either they have a bunch of antiquated computers from the last century that all of their flights rely on, or they get new computers and put virtual machines with Windows 3.1 on brand new 2024 computers. Either way, it's insane.
Yeah.
They haven't put a single thing back into their IT infrastructure. That's insane.
Indeed.
I can't believe it.
Yeah. And of course, just as unbelievable as the fixes for this, one of the fixes, of course, was get into safe mode, which is beyond many users' capability.
Oh, yeah.
But the other was, hey, so if you rebooted a bunch of times in a row, it might fix itself.
Maybe. Like 15 times. Maybe it'll fix itself. Maybe. What it did was it got into Crowdstrike has their own drivers because they have their own setup, and it got into the drivers directory for Crowdstrike, and they put in a bad update to one of those drivers. And Windows, when it booted up, tried to load them, and it caused what's known as a kernel panic.
Yep.
Which is kernel panics are bad. I mean, they should sound that it's, that was what was causing the blue screen and the boot loop. And I gotta tell you, that's one of the most frustrating messages you can get is you've booted into a recovery environment. You should do this, and everything will be fine. Normal user tries that shit. It don't do shit. So the fix, part of why this became an issue in terms of the fix is so many IT departments have been completely outsourced. Some of them don't even have a physical IT person anymore.
Indeed.
They're overseas, they remote into computers, and that's how they handle shit.
And if something physically happens that someone needs to be on site, they go, oh, yeah, okay, we have a guy on contract that can be here within 8 hours. And when you've got a few hundred machines that you need to update this way, one at a time, that takes a long time to sort out. Yeah. Because this used to be what I did. This was my job. If something like this happened, this would have been me walking from computer to computer, or hopefully pushing an update across our own network, maybe to what you had to do was you had to go into a certain directory and delete a file. And if you presented that instructions to most users, the vast majority of them would go, what? I have to what? Yeah. So to give you an idea, because I suspect the people who watch our show are a little more tech savvy in general, not necessarily as good as you and me or better than you or me, but at least they know a little bit. I have met people who can't follow instructions that include a hyperlink. Click on this link for the full set of instructions. And I get called up. What do I do? Did you click on the link? There's a link? Yeah, it's in the second line of the email. Oh, I didn't read the email.
You didn't read the email.
So what also gets me is this is not the first time the CEO of this company has been involved in a major tech meltdown.
No,
he was the CTO of McAfee in 2010 when a security update from them crashed tens of thousands of computers. And now and the reason he left McAfee, by the way, is because McAfee is slow. We should be able to do stuff better and faster. So he split off and formed his own company. Crowdstrike, which broke the internet better,
again,
faster.
Went from seats like that was one of the most massive failures. It led to the eventual point of where McAfee is today, which is pretty much in the toilet. The company fell apart after that debacle.
So,
and for that, he was made a CEO.
Part of the reason why McAfee had that issue happen is because they cut their in-house testing of their stuff.
Yep.
And I'm concerned that CrowdStrike cut their in-house testing of their stuff. And it makes me think that this fellow, CEO George Kurtz, maybe, just maybe, can't find his own ass with both hands, a map, a torch, and a team of Sherpas led by Tenzing Norgay. And if you get that last reference, which is a deep cut, congratulations to you.
So yeah, it's a big mess.
That is one way to describe it. I literally know people who are going like, I was going to get on a plane this weekend, go somewhere. I'm not sure if that's happening now.
Yeah. It's so. What's going to be done? Well, remarkably, the smaller companies recovered from this quicker than the bigger ones because it was you had to go to every computer to sort this out, unless you could really quickly write a script to go through the network, find that file, and delete it on all the computers, which without being able to boot into Windows, it's still, you can do it, but it's tricky. But
it's, well, it part of it depends on your systems. So if you have boot from network enabled, you can maybe boot an OS from the network that then goes in and says, find this file on the local PC and get rid of it. But most places don't do that.
No, they don't. Hold on a second. I'm trying to adjust some things here on the fly. My apologies.
No worries.
So put there. Don't need that.
Oh, and so by the way, the company it will not surprise me if they get sued by quite a lot of people.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They lost some significant portion of their stock price over the last couple days, and while there are analysts saying, "Yo, this is a great time to buy it," I'm like, "Really? This company may not exist in a year because they've been sued out of existence." Down over 10%.
Oof. Well, speaking of someone who else is in trouble, we've been talking about this story for a while now. We've got a new twist on it. We've been talking about how Intel's 13th and 14th gen processors have been having issues. Yeah, they've been having issues. Considerable.
Nash. We can no longer call them issues at this point. They've got subscriptions.
It's a mess.
But we think we now know the reason for the mess, or at least a reason for the mess.
Potentially, maybe, possibly.
Part of the issue is that there's an anti-oxidation coating that is applied to chips. Basically, anti-oxidation is anti-rust.
Right.
speaking simply. So it's rust when it's iron, and it's oxidation when it's other metals, because we're still very much iron-based.
Yeah.
And oxidation is bad for chips.
Yeah.
Because it makes things stop working well.
Yeah, because when a metal oxidizes, it's a layer of film on it that interferes with its conductivity. If it can't conduct electricity from one surface to the next, then it can't make connections and it stops working properly. So Gamers Nexus, obviously they have been all over this, was given a tip from that Intel's fabrication process has a flaw. They screwed up the antioxidation coating to prevent that film from applying and causing conductivity issues. That means part of the chip, when it gets to a certain point after it's been in service for a while, when oxygen, as you know, oxidation, it doesn't happen immediately. It happens over weeks and sometimes over months,
which matches the degradation of the chips.
When it hits that point, suddenly the chip cannot function as designed anymore, meaning it can't hit its power targets, it can't hit its clock targets, it loses its performance, and sometimes it becomes outright unstable.
Or just absolutely inoperable in some cases. And this is something, as we just mentioned, it increases over time. So,
yeah.
Well, a fix for this is, we're going to put out a firmware fix for oxidation, really, that says we're going to limit the multiplier to 53 times, and that sorts things out. And I'm like, that'll sort things out until enough oxidation happens that you have to put out another firmware update, say, okay, now we're limiting it to 50.
If this really is the antioxidation coating, being
Intel
screwed
needs
up
to
on
replace every one of the chips.
Yeah, well, more than that, because that would mean the entire line. That is all, or pretty much the entire line that's been produced. We don't know how many, but every CPU from that batch is destined to die quickly. Not chips eventually, we're talking like decades, chips will degrade, normal use. Like 50, 60 years, you can probably get out of a single chip. It'll be fine until maybe you start seeing signs of...
I'll say, depending on the hardware platform, even longer. There's circuits that were made, 50 years ago, as Nash said, that are still perfectly functional. Now, they're not the high-speed kind of thing we're dealing with here, but they still work.
Well, I mean, yeah, but they will eventually, just pure entropy. Over a long period of time, there will be degradation in the chip. It's unavoidable. It's just the nature of electricity and silicon. But we're talking such a long time frame. This is within under the scope of a year that these chips have begun failing. I haven't seen that ever from Intel, ever.
And so what this is, like I say, it's an issue with the fabrication process. It could be, and I'm not forgiving Intel for this, but it could be as simple as straightforward as the vendor providing the anti-oxidation substance shortchanged them or changed their formula, thinking, this formula, it works just as good in all these other circumstances, and it's cheaper, so we'll spend less money and still charge them the same. But it turns out, in these chip situations, it doesn't work as well. Or it could be, just the structure of the production line is like, hey, Bob, I think this nozzle's clogged. Don't worry about it. Well, there's 9 other nozzles. It'll be fine.
So, and this is also, I'm trying to find out, was this before? I don't think these were done at TSMC, were they? I know Intel's been doing some stuff at TSMC, but I believe
let's see here.
These were still Intel production, because they're using a process that's not really on a par with what the TSMC's cutting edge stuff. And beyond that, there's beyond just the producing the chips, there's also what's called packaging, which is when you get the silicon wafer and it's been etched and engraved, but you have to take that and put it on a PCB with a heat sink and all that stuff so it will work in a computer. And that's packaging.
So I can't
I think packaging
who's making this.
Packaging seems like the stage where this failure potentially could be occurring. If this is an anti-oxidation issue, that means that either Intel, if they're doing the packaging for the chips in-house, it's on them, or whoever they contracted to do the packaging, it's on them.
No, you cannot hotfix a cadmium plating. That's
no, you cannot. I mean, all they can do, the only thing they can do is force the chips to clock down, to use less power, to operate under their current clock rating, and that's what room for potential.
That's something that people who paid money to have those high clock ratings are not going to be thrilled about.
Yeah, that's what when you start looking at a class action is what
some of the vendors who have been selling these have basically said, no, Intel, we're returning all of these. We're purging our inventory to counter these, and give us our money back.
Yeah, because I mean, the 13th and 14th gen for Intel has just been straight up cursed, I gotta say.
Maybe they should have skipped a number and they said, okay, we're not going to call it 13th gen. 13 is bad luck. And there's plenty of buildings that don't have a 13th floor. We're just not going to have a 13th gen. And
they were pushing so hard to compete with AMD.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. They could, it's this corporate culture at Intel has always been, we are the best. We have to be the best. We are the fastest. We are the market leader. And AMD has put them on the back foot as far as CPUs go. Not just in home use, not just in gaming use, but in server use. EPYC has been a really affordable alternative to Intel Xenon processors, which are always sky high, ridiculously expensive. What really kicked their butts was when this generation, when AMD said, we're going to put the Xenons, we're going to put the EPYC server CPUs in an AM5 socket. We're not going to use the Threadripper socket for these. These are going to be on an AM5 socket, which that's a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah.
And a lot cheaper to produce.
Your board partners don't have to worry about, a lot of additional customization.
Yeah. So Intel, the 13th and 14th gen have run ridiculously high temperatures, ridiculously high power targets. These things have always been operating on the precipice, just basic, before this issue even started up. The amount of power these things were pulling out of the wall was already crazy for a CPU, and not for a desktop CPU. Now, workstation CPUs have been kind of on the stupid end for a while, but these were
most people aren't using workstation CPUs.
No.
You're an exception, and even yours was AMD.
Yeah, mine was AMD. It was the power target wasn't quite as crazy. AMD, the efficiency they've managed to get, that they'll continue to get, because if you look at the release for Ryzen 9000, we'll talk about that in a bit.
To seg into our next story, yeah.
Yeah, if you look at that, the 9900X, which is 12 core, 24 thread, has been reduced from 170 watts down to 120 watts, while still being faster than the previous generation. They are saying that across the board, they're looking at a temperature reduction of 7 degrees just due to efficiency and a whole lot of the advances. And we don't know what Intel's next are going to look like. But we have.
I think we do. I think it's going to be an oxidized pile of silicon is what it's going to look like.
Well, yeah, the next generation. the next generation from Intel are a completely new architecture, starting from scratch. They are keeping their big little design. I think that we know that, but
which is not a bad design.
Yeah, but it's been but it's going to be all from scratch, and that could be really bad or it could be really great because it gives them someplace new to start from without being beholden to what they were on before. And that's starting over is what has helped AMD a couple of times, just jump like leaps and bounds.
So let's now seg into our AMD story.
Yeah.
Since we've kind of given away the big ones on there. So the Ryzen 9000 series processor, which, by the way, they've extended AM5 support to 2027.
To 2027, which is super cool.
Yeah.
That means
the specs on it are amazing because we're talking a 16-core processor that's 170 watts, 12-core, 120 watts, and the 8 and 6-core, 65 watts.
Yeah, they've dropped from, they were around 100 previously. Now they're down to a 65 watt parts. They had versions of them that were 65 watts, but they didn't boost as high. Now they do. It's
one thing I'd like to know, because I looked up the specs of my current computer. I'm running a 5900X processor.
Yeah.
It's 105 watts. So 4 generations later, massive increase in power, 15 additional watts.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Oh, and by the way, we have a release date on these by now.
End of July.
Which is end of July, which means I may be looking at building a new computer towards the end of the
year. I would, if I were you, I would, this is the one hitch. I would wait for a bit because while the new CPUs are coming out at the end of July, I don't believe the 800 series chipsets are coming out until the end of August.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm shooting for the end of the year, like December 1st. I'm going to start ordering parts.
That's a good time. Because with these, when they come out, you will be able to use them in existing AMD 600 series motherboards. X670, B650, A620, those will all be functional with these with the BIOS update. But the 800 series, the next up, which I gotta say, they're, aside from adding USB 4 at the highest level, they're not impressing me. They're really not impressing me. Well,
I'll be honest, what I'm going to be looking for in a motherboard at that point is 2 or more M.2 slots at the current highest spec.
I mean, you could be crazy like me and get the there's 8670. Officially, the new lineup is 8670E, which is the X apparently already stands for extreme. So it's the Extreme 870 Extreme Edition. X670E, which is stupid high, X670, B650, and confusingly, B640. There is no A SKU this time, which normally the A SKU denoted this was the budget entry option. B640 is the budget entry option. It's limited to PCIe 3.0, but they're calling it B640 instead of A6 or B840. I said these wrong. B840 instead of B6 or B820 or whatever, what they've had before. It's so honestly, there is not going to be a B850E extreme version. They're cut that SKU. And I think that's a good call because there are so many 650 and 650E boards that are the differentiation between them is so slight that you have a pile of them they can't sell because, but the only one that's currently, if it has an E in it, it's using 2 of the chipset controller chips. The only one of the 800 series is going to have 2 of them is going to be the XX870E. All the rest of them is only going to have 1, which, unless you're on the super cutting edge, I don't see how most people are going to need more than the 850E. Or I'm sorry, the 850, because there's no 850.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason I went with the X670E is I got all the PCIe. Yeah, I got all the PCIe 5.0 on everything. And now that's standard. That's going to be standard in this next generation. So, you know, they've improved these. But we still don't know prices. Not on those, not on these either. We don't know what the prices are going to look like on these CPUs. I doubt they're going to look very different from the current pricing or the release pricing, I should say, for Ryzen 7000.
The reason I don't think they're going to either is because I think they want to continue to eat Intel's lunch.
Oh yeah,
as we just been talking about, Intel is hurting, and this is, let's face it, a time for AMD to kick them when they're down. Which, if you've ever been in a fight, is the best time to kick someone.
Oh yes. Yes.
And so keeping the price low when Intel is having problems with 13th and 14th generation chips means that a lot more people, even the people who are like, no, I've been with Intel forever. Wow, that price looks really good. And
the performance.
These chips they're rusting in front of my eyes. AMD.
Now, I mean, I am sitting here tempted to, can I get a 9950 because it's going to run cooler? I'm like, not. This is the thing. If you're an existing user, you have a Ryzen 7000 CPU, there's really no point in upgrading because the difference in up.
Yeah, I feel the 15-watt difference in the process, my current processor, this processor, if I went for the 9900X, would be like, I'm not even going to notice that.
Percentage, like the difference in performance between the 7900X and the 9900X is going to be maybe 10 to 15%, which is neat, but I already have a 7900.
And I'm going from a 5900X.
Oh, it's 2-generation jump. It's going to be huge. But I already have, if you're already on the Ryzen 7000 series, there's no really good reason to upgrade unless you must have the bleeding edge. That means at the end of July, there are going to be some amazing deals on Ryzen 7000. And if you are looking for a deal, I would jump, especially on a Ryzen 7600 or 7600X, because that will be even if you just get that one now, get on the AM5 platform, get a Ryzen 7600X when the prices come down after these get released. That puts you on the AM5 platform. You're going to be able to upgrade that until 2027. That's when it's going to end. Or official, they might extend support beyond that. Again. But I know I'm not going to hit this generation. I'm waiting on the generation after this one. Then I will start looking, because that's probably going to have a significant. I don't know if they're doing TikTok or not. Intel used to have something they called their TikTok iteration. First, they would have an architecture improvement. Then they would have a optimization, usually a die shrink and whatnot. And they just keep going. They would call tick and talk. Tick would be the big changes, and talk would be to make it run right. I don't know if AMD is doing that with these. All I know is I'm probably going to skip maybe this generation, maybe the one after, depending. Because right now, the CPU I have it's perfectly fine. Happy to be running this one. So in any event, there's going to be, price. Unfortunately, this is the one thing that still irritates me. AMD is keeping the AM4 platform as their budget option. There's no more Ryzen 3. Effectively, AM4 CPUs are taking the place that Ryzen 3 would have had with the which is messy, because some of them have really good, like you get like a 5800X 3D is way above a Ryzen 3. But effectively, if you have a Ryzen 5 5600, if you have even like a 5700, maybe, that's what Ryzen 3 is now. So there's no more budget option. And that's the place that Intel, whatever problem they're having with the 14900K, the 13900K, the bottom of the rung of it, the i3s are still killing it. Like the i3-12100 is the best modern deal for a system, unless you want to go back and build AM4 and be on, that platform. Intel is at least offering a budget option. AMD isn't. They're saying, oh, use AM4. That's our budget option. I don't like that. That bothers me. But anyway, so that's the news there for this week. Now it's time to get to your tech questions. If you have them, you can send those to requests@radiodeadair.com. We'll try to help you out with those. Let's see what's on our list so far. All right, this first one. Okay. Not your fault, Anthony. Anthony is on this one. It's not your fault. This is just one of those rabbit hole kind of questions. And, we'll try to answer it. Just understand this is one of those that's frustrating. Hello, Nash, Mike, and Kitties. Please help. For a while now, I keep getting popping, clicking, stuttering in my audio at weird brief intervals. It's intermittent, and I can't force it to happen myself. I'll be watching a video or playing a game, and the audio will pop for less than a second and then carry on. It wouldn't be a problem, except it's really noticeable when it happens and really distracting. I've tried uninstalling and reinstalling my Realtek drivers, and that hasn't worked. I went into my sound settings and disabled enable audio enhancements, but that didn't do anything either. It doesn't matter if it's my laptop speaker or if it's my headphones, and I use Bluetooth headphones, so that makes it even more confusing. I'm at a point I'm going to try reinstalling Windows. Is there anything else I can try first? Thank you, Anthony R.
Okay, so if it wasn't for the fact that it's happening with Bluetooth headphones, I would think that it is a physical connection issue, but that it's Bluetooth as well, I'm a little iffy.
Software. This is saying to me there is something running in the background
that is taking causing, a processor.
Might be taking a processor, might be causing latency, might be just screwing things up. It's one of those weird things that is hard to track down. But my hunch, the first place to look at that I would deal with if I was handling this myself, if I was on site, I would make sure every other option is shut down. I don't even know. I haven't tried in a long time. Can you get audio, video? Can you watch a YouTube video in safe mode? You can, right? I don't play in safe mode.
Okay, so if you turn on safe mode with networking, then yes. Because
you should be able
to, because you need to be able to have network connectivity to get to YouTube. So agreed safe mode. I believe you could. You may have to tweak safe mode a little bit to load additional video drivers to actually watch the YouTube video. But yeah, that's a good.
I think the basic, the basic, you can get to the basic stuff like that. Like I think VLC will work. It'll just work like Windows basic video drivers, no super acceleration or anything like that.
And the reason we say safe mode is because a lot of stuff is not loaded in safe mode. So there's a lot less of a load, as it were, on the computer. So with all those things not running, if you're still getting the popping sound, that would tell us, okay, that's really weird, because our first thought of, other things taking priority over sound is not the case.
Yeah, it's what I'm thinking is what you should do. Go into safe mode, watch a long thing in YouTube, then close out Chrome entirely.
Video.
Yeah. Then, honestly, if that doesn't work, or if that works fine with no issues, then reboot it back into safe mode again. And this time, play a CD. I know it's weird. It's like CD or an MP3 file or something local that uses a different program to like the Windows Media Player or whatnot to access the. What I want to differentiate in there is to find out if there's a specific software player that's causing the issue, because Chrome does it their own way. They have background processes and how they handle video and audio. Then Windows Media Player has their own way of doing it. VLC has their own way of doing it. If you can trip it up by finding one in specific that's doing the popping and others that aren't, that'll help narrow it down. This is really a case of you have to narrow it down.
Yeah.
If you get everything working fine in safe mode and none of the players are messed up, then it's time to start up regular Windows again, but this time you want to remove all of your startup items. So nothing launches in the background when regular Windows starts up. And then one at a time, start adding back your startup items, one at a time.
Now, if you're using Windows 10, one thing you can do is you can just type your Windows key and type startup and see what you have there.
Yeah.
And if there's more than a screen full of stuff, then you've got a lot of stuff that is starting up there. So you maybe just automatically go, I thought I uninstalled that. Let me just turn that off now.
Like this is a process of elimination thing. There is programs that can help. Let me see which is it Latency Mon? Yeah, Latency Mon is a free piece of software for check. It looks for audio latency and see if anything in the background is causing an issue. It's free. You can find it. I'll put it over here so you can see it on the screen. It's a free bit of software that can help with diagnosing if you actually have it. It can help narrow it down visually. It'll give you log files. Honestly, I think there's just something conflicting, something causing the issue, something that's interfering a little bit when you're trying to get audio to play. Not the entire thing, but it's like, hey, I need to do something. And it's butting into the audio playback. And the CPU is going, whoa. So it's like nudging the audio playback a little. It's like bumping a record needle, kind of a little bit. For lack of a better analogy. That's where you should start looking. It's going to be a little bit of a needle in the haystack. You're going to chase it down. It's going to be frustrating. I've done this kind of stuff myself, but it's one of those issues that's just not always straightforward. So, good luck. Let us know what happens. All right. Next up, this is from Gerald in New Mexico. Hi. Hey, Nash and Mike. Forgive me if you've answered this one before, but I'm kind of curious after all these years since the Sound Blaster came out, if there's any point in using a sound card anymore. I saw the new ones from Creative Lab that have been out for a while, and I was considering getting an AE5, but only if it can do something my motherboard sound card can't. Thanks, Gerald in New Mexico.
Okay, so the short answer is, are you doing something with professional audio? If the answer is yes, then you might consider a sound card. If the answer is no, probably don't need one.
The Sound Blaster, the new AE5, the AE7, AE9. AE9 is really for professional audio, straight up. And AE7 is for audio files. AE5 is kind of a gamer video card, sound card. But what it adds, mainly what it adds is two things. For one, you have their spatial audio setup, there's
a possibility of equalizers and things like that don't come with the sound ports on your motherboard.
Yeah, it's got a weird thing called. It's got a weird thing called Scout Mode, which is something that's supposed to help you hear things in game, and it's kind of wonky. There's also it has a Dolby and a DTS Connect encoder, which is for more high end audio output stuff, if that's the kind of stuff you want to be watching and listening to music for. And it has RGB. It's an RGB controller built into it for some reason. That's the main one. The main hardware difference, I would say, between your motherboard sound and the Sound Blaster AE5 is the headphone amp. It includes a headphone amplifier that allows you to use higher end headphones that have a lower impedance or higher impedance. The basic impedance for headphones is normal is between 32 and 149 ohms, sort of. The headphone amplifier can allow you to set it to go lower from like 16 to 31 ohms or higher from 150 to 600 ohms. This only matters in higher end headphones. Most people are using a regular 32 to 149. You don't even know what the ohms on your headphones are. And that's because it covers a wide range and it's kind of an industry standard. But the audiophile ones, the higher end ones, they're a little out of spec. If that sounds interesting to you, that's what it's there for. It's for a little bit more of a nudge and a little bit few more options. And especially like 5.1, 7.1 surround. It's got, in fact, 7.1 is one of those things that can do that some motherboards can't, but it has those options. If your motherboard, pretty much look at the back of your motherboard, and if it has 6 3.5 millimeter jacks, 5 or 6 of those, then there really isn't a ton off the cuff that a sound blaster can offer you. This is more for people who are looking for more higher end audio experience, but it's also fidgety and kind of audiophile-ish and that sort of thing. Pretty much motherboard sound cards have made external sound cards a little obsolete. Unless we're talking about a USB audio interface where it's got a phantom power and a condenser mic and XLR inputs and stuff like that, or that's a very specialized sort of sound card thing. Most of motherboards out there, the Realtek has done a number on this. I mean, since I think the sound card stuff as discrete sound cards probably ended at the end of the 2000s, really being a thing, a big thing. They're still available, but they're not what I would call, necessary, because motherboard sound cards, motherboard sound built into it, it's taken over. It's
Yeah. Now, like I said, if you're doing professional audio work, then there's a difference. You might have, there might be features you need. But just for the regular user, not so much.
Not so much. So, but fortunately, they're not stupid expensive. I think, how much was the right now the AE5?
$129.
Ooh, that actually is pricier. I thought they were down closer to 80 now. No, that's pricey for a sound card. Yeah, especially considering the other things you can invest in your system. Shoot.
So
yeah, I mean,
you said AE5, right?
Yeah, the AE5 Plus,
okay,
I think is the
Yeah. So it's actually 150 at Newegg, but I want to say Direct from Creative was 130 this weekend or something like that.
Yeah, it's that's a bit much. That's considerable much. Yeah, that's so yeah, it's a bit much. All right. Anyway, next question here. This is from Terry J. Do you have any good case recommendations for airflow? I've been looking at getting something under $100. The case I've been using is over 10 years old, and I wanted a newer one, and also one that could potentially improve my temperatures, considering it's been way too hot this summer. My current build's a Ryzen 5 5600X, MSI Tomahawk B450, EVGA RTX 2060 KO, 16 gigs of RAM, 7050 watt Corsair power supply, Western Digital Black M.2 1 terabyte. My current case is a Raid Max Vampire. I love back. The 2000s were a great time for gaming PC cases because they were extreme. You had stuff like the Raid Max Vampire. That's what they named the case. Like now you have something like the Meshify or the Flux or something like that. No, they had the Vampire and the Alien and the Disintegrator or some other shit.
Okay,
yeah.
So I do have a recommendation.
Yeah.
For a case, NZXT H7 Flow, $90.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good one. NZXT.
It is
N7
about
Flow?
the exact same size as what you have, but it's got way better airflow, and it hits all the buttons you asked for, and it actually looks okay.
Yeah, that's one. That's one. There are a couple here. Also kind of like the one around $100 that's kind of the industry goes, oh yeah, of course is Fractal. Their Meshify C is kind of like the one people hold up and the airflow on that one's amazing. That's right at $99.97.
Yeah. Now if you want to go $10 more,
yeah.
Fractal Design North ATX mid tower case. Now, the only thing in my mind, this case, the airflow is okay on it. What it's got going for it is a retro design because it looks like it's got a wood panel front.
Yeah, I've seen those. Wood paneling is becoming a thing. It's like everyone is suddenly making computers that look like 1980s station wagons. It's weird.
We had one of those.
So did we.
Ours wasn't a station wagon. It was one of the early minivan type things with the wood paneling on the side.
Now, for a little bit, actually, a considerable less amount of money, for $54, Montech, it's a company that's come in and pretty much they've been very cutthroat with their pricing. There have been a couple of companies that have come into the computer space now, like Thermalright and, well, before they got sanctioned, Deep Cool, and a couple others that have been just undercutting a bunch of other people. Montech is one of them. Montech's X3 Mesh includes, out of the box, 340 millimeter fans and 320 millimeter fans. Mid-tower, ATX, glass, high airflow, the whole 9 yards. $55 USD.
And when you take into account the fans that are coming with it, and these are RGB fans, realistically, what you're paying for there is a $15 case that happens to come with 6 fans.
And it's a nice case, nothing super special to write home about, but in terms of airflow, it's really good. Handles just about any video card size. Lot of storage space potential, a lot of places for radiators and fans. For just value proposition, that's crazy. I could not foresee turning my nose up at that, because that's just
that's the kind of case that is going to show up in our budget build. If we have a budget build this year.
But
because like I say, you get a case. It's got a separate PC shroud sort of deal going on. PC power supply shroud going on. And like I said, 6 fans. That's 6 fans we're not buying. Separately.
3 of them are 140 millimeter. Good Lord. However, I do want to put a caveat on this. Because you said you want better airflow because it's summer. Now, I looked at your case, the Raid Max Vampire, and that thing is not great on airflow to begin with. But a lot of your parts are already low power or lower end. The 5600X, the 2060 KO, these are not like super high blazing heat parts. Ambient temperature matters more than anything else, more than airflow, more than all-in-one coolers or air coolers. If the ambient temperature where you're keeping the computer is too high, then airflow is not going to make a huge dent in it. You have to keep the ambient temperature down. And also keep in mind that the PC itself is going to be increasing the ambient temperature because it puts out some heat. Now, you got a relatively low power part, so it's not going to put out the kind of heat that a lot of others will. But when you sit there, you still get to a gate.
One of the things we're saying here basically is take the money you're saving on the case, good call, and buy some blackout curtains in the direction the sun is coming in most of the time.
Yeah, more than a now the vampire. I gotta show you the Raid Max vampire. This is a bless your heart kind of computer, if ever there was one. Well, not at the time. Not at the this was
every computer looked like this at the time.
Yeah, this was the cutting edge shit back then. So got to find some good pictures of it, but
Newegg has great pictures of it, Nash. If you want to go there,
yeah, just getting the page to actually.
The thing about the Newegg pictures, I'm just saying this. I'm not saying this was a bad case.
Here we go.
The Newegg picture, it honestly looks like they found one that was a little used because it just feels like it's dusty.
Yeah, you can tell it's got the 5 1/4 slots. It's got two 120 millimeters in the no, it's got that's a 200 millimeter or maybe a 160. It's a large fan in the front. Part of the problem with these, you can see there's a rack of hard drive slots behind it. Hey, TC Lucas, thank you for the rate. And the way they were designed back then, we've pretty much abandoned putting stuff up front. That's where the air is supposed to come in now. So that's always going to be better. But yeah, this is a gamer case. There were crazier ones than this. There were way crazier ones. And it's got an acrylic side panel where you could put 2 more fans on, which if there was only some way that we could have the tempered glass sides with fan slots, that would be super cool. But that's also
I feel you could, but it would be very expensive cutting the glass.
Expensive. Yeah, very expensive.
And potentially bad.
Yeah, that was crazy back in the day. Anything we've recommended will have better airflow than this, simply because if you look at the front of this case, come on. I show people. There we go. Look inside the front of this case. You see there's a fan down there at the bottom, but all of those racks of where there would be 5 1/4 drives and 3.5 inch hard drives, it's all right in the way of that incoming airflow. And it was intended that you would put fans on the side. That would be the side airflow, but this doesn't come with fans on the side. And that's also not the best solution. Yeah, it's got the holes for the external water cooling. Yeah, remember those little buttholes that they had in it? Yeah, put little buttholes in the back so you could run water cooling lines outside of the case. My computer has an anus. Sorry. Anyway, that's pretty much anything you get is going to have considerably improved airflow as opposed to this one. So. All right, I'm going to check the Outlook one more time, see if we have anything new. I do not believe we do. Yeah, that's going to do it for this week.
Okay, right at an hour.
Yeah, right at. Folks, we'll be back next Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions for me and Mike, send those to requests@radio.air.com, and we will happily help you out with those. Until then, for Mike and myself, we'll
help you. We'll help you out with it.
For Mike and myself, we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.